Well, good afternoon, everybody. And thank you for joining me this afternoon. The presentation is titled Adapting, Remixing, and Redistributing in the ESL Writing Course. And I am Sevtap France. In today's presentation, my goal is to raise awareness and hopefully inspire those of you who are willing to explore with open educational resources. I'd like to share a little bit my experience and the steps that we have taken with my colleagues while building a book or a few chapters to be used in one of our advanced level writing courses in ESL. And I also would like to talk a little bit about the Creative Commons license, since it's important to know what rights we have and what we have to pay attention on when using open educational resources. And then towards the end of the presentation, I would like to share a few of the materials that we have developed and how I have repurposed them. And I'd like to share them with you just to kind of give you an overall idea how open educational materials look and feel when used in the classroom environment. You may all be familiar with the UNESCO's universal definition for OERs, but as we all simply know, OERs are freely licensed materials that can be modified, remixed, and redistributed under the Creative Commons license. But it's really important to know what rights we have with the Creative Commons license, since each OER material comes with its own licensing element. So in my next slide, I would like to actually share with you a short 4-minute video about the Creative Commons license and what freedom and limitations we have so you become more familiar with it. So let's look at the video all together now.
Have you ever wondered how to download and share digital content legally? How do you let people know that you want them to reuse your own work? Creative Commons licenses can help you do both. We'll show you how. Our world's exploded with digital opportunities. Now we can communicate, share, and work together using the exceptional distribution network that is the internet. Information and content can fly between us in exciting new ways. But it's important to know that when something is created, say a photo, a document, or a music track, it's automatically protected by copyright. Copyright enables people to say who can share and reuse their creations. You must always obtain someone's permission before sharing or reusing their work, even when it's posted online. But what if a creator wants everyone to use their work without the hassle of granting permission over and over? This is where Creative Commons can help. Creative Commons provides licensing tools that are free to use. You can apply a license to your work, which refines your copyright and streamlines how you give permission. Zach here downloads a photo called CC Kiwi that he wants to use in his science project. He can do this without asking Kiri, the photographer, first, because she's already given permission with a Creative Commons license. Kiri's license is legally robust, but easy for Zach to understand. She's told the world, including Zach, that they can use CC Kiwi as long as they acknowledge her as the original photographer. There are more rules Kiri could have included. Creative Commons licenses are made up of license elements. You can think of them as rules, and each have their own special symbol. This is attribution. It means that Zach must acknowledge Kiri when he publishes his science project containing her photo. This is non-commercial. It means no one else but Kiri is permitted to make money from CC Kiwi. Tim wants to print the photo onto t-shirts and distribute them to friends. He can do this, but he must not sell them. This is no derivatives, and it means that Kiri hasn't given permission to change her photo. Kate can use CC Kiwi on her design blog, but will need to ask Kiri before retouching or mixing up the image. And this is share alike. It means new creations that use CC Kiwi need to carry the same license. Jack incorporates his own remix of CC Kiwi in his video installation, but he must share the work under the same terms that Kiri has. Each Creative Commons license gives permission to share and includes the attribution rule. So people who find your Creative Commons licensed work are automatically allowed to share it, but are required to acknowledge you if they do. The other 3 license elements are optional, and you can choose which ones to add, if any. Here are the 6 combinations that make up Creative Commons licenses. The difference between them is how many rules apply when someone wishes to use your work. The attribution license allows reusers the most freedom, and the attribution non-commercial no derivatives license allows the least freedom. The attribution license and the attribution share alike licenses are sometimes referred to as free cultural works approved licenses. These 3 licenses restrict commercial use of a work. And these 2 licenses do not give permission for adapting or remixing. These 2 licenses require new works to be licensed under the same terms. To choose and apply one of these licenses, and to view their terms in more detail, visit us at creativecommons.org.nz. Or you can answer some questions to help you decide which license best suits your needs at creativecommons.org/choose. There are some good ways to find other people's Creative Commons licensed work online.
So again, since most of us are using the OER materials because they are accessible and they're customizable, it's really important that we are familiar with the Creative Commons licenses and know which elements each resource that we are sharing carries. So again, I am one of the faculty members who worked with OER materials, or who has been working with OER materials for a while now. And before I share my experience with you, I'll talk a little bit about the advantages of using OER materials. So first of all, one of the biggest reasons that most of us use OERs is because of the reduced cost reason for our students, right? And to promote equity, we want to make sure our students have access to the materials from day one on. And you may have run into the same issue like I have many times. I need to wait for a week or sometimes 2 weeks for some of my students to get their books. But with open educational resources, that's no longer a problem because I can provide the material on day one and be fair to all my students. And the other beauty of using open educational resources is pedagogical innovation. Especially if you are taking on this project with a group of colleagues with whom you enjoy working and creating, this really becomes a fun project because then you can recustomize, remodify the tools that you have or the resources that you have in an effective way that actually fit your needs and your students' needs. So you can target towards the course objectives. Right? And it also promotes collaboration and participation since you can repurpose the materials and share with your colleagues and your students in a way that you want. And of course, it incorporates a freedom of choice. These are some of the benefits, the advantages of using open educational resources, but just like with anything else, there are also some disadvantages that we have to keep in mind. There is never a perfect solution to the best material. So just like with commercial books that we find difficult using sometimes because they do not necessarily target the content in a way that we would like to share with our students, there is no perfect material out there that necessarily would fill all your needs, or you may not find the perfect material that covers all the content that you want. And one other disadvantage is it is a little bit time consuming because there are really a huge number of resources out there. And you just need to really invest some time into finding the materials and then repurposing them and remixing them with what you have in mind to accomplish. And one other thing is also constant updating. So if you are using the materials as they are, you always have to make sure the material is still active and available for you, right? And if you have repurposed the material, then you don't necessarily run into this issue. But if you're using a direct link from an open resource, then you have to make sure that it's still available each semester when you are ready to use it. So therefore, it requires constant updating. And obviously, what is also important is that you have an open mind and are willing to make changes as you go along, right? And then, of course, you need to know how you're going to use the attribution, the Creative Commons license on each one of these materials that you're going to use. So I'd like to share a little bit our experience with you and the steps that we have taken. So if you are wanting to explore with open educational resources, you have to have an open mind, first of all, right? You have to be willing to change and enjoy the benefits of researching, repurposing, creating, and then sharing, not just with your students, but also with your colleagues. So the sense of accomplishment, when you have that motivation, really keeps you going. The second step is to determine what you need, right? Look at the commercial textbook that you're using and then determine what fits your needs and what else you would like to add or change. And then start from there, right? Once you have determined what you need, it will make the process of looking for materials easy for you. And again, set aside some time, right? It takes time and determination. It's not a 2-hour process. You know, sometimes you have to spend a couple weekends on this project and go through different resources to see what is available out there. And you will be surprised once you start actually conducting the research, how much is out there and how many valuable resources you can find. And then start browsing the specialized search engines. This is one of the most important steps, I would say, even though I listed it as the 4th step, because knowing where you're looking is very important. And then enjoy the beauty of adapting, customizing, remixing, and then sharing with your colleagues. So our library is one of the best resources to start with. When I started with the most commons, and then I used the OER commons, which are specialized search engines. And then I also used Lumen Learning, which provides courses, complete courses, OER courses. And then just recently, I also learned about the LibreText platform, which provides a significant number of resources. And in addition to these resources that they have available, what is awesome about this platform, and I learned this just recently on Friday after having participated in the LibreText webinar or the workshop that they had, is you can actually contact them and share the resources that you have found from different platforms, and they will build these resources for you under your account, so you can easily mix and update and customize these materials. So it's really an awesome platform that I'm looking forward to exploring further myself as well. And I did not know about this up until last week, Friday as well. So again, it takes time becoming familiar with these tools, but our library would be a great place to start researching and looking for open educational resources. So I'd like to share maybe 2 of my samples that I found with you. For example, through the OER Commons, I found this activity book, and I use it in my 202 advanced level writing classes when we are targeting grammar concepts. Like I use, for example, the subject on sentence fragments, and then the comma splice and run-ons when we are talking about common sentence errors. Another resource that I found through the Galileo Open Learning Materials is the College ESL Writers Applied Grammar and Composition Strategies for Success book. Again, this is a huge book. It has 300 pages, but some of the things that I look for when I find a resource is, first of all, I pay attention obviously on the license, right? So it's important to make sure that is a Creative Commons license. And then it's a share alike, it's non-commercial. And as long as I give credit to the author, I am free to use this material and I can customize it and repurpose it in a way that fits my needs. And of course, the next step for me would be to look through the contents page and identify the subjects that I could be using through these, through this resource. So these are just a few of them I wanted to share with you just to give you an overall idea. Again, there are a number of resources out there that you can start searching from. So why did we use ESL 0202 to start with? The advanced level writing class has the highest number of students enrolled each semester. So we thought by targeting this course and building OER materials for this course, we can provide a benefit to many more students, right? And most commercially available textbooks, as I mentioned earlier, fail to provide the content that we target in this course. And since we have several adjunct faculty members teaching this course, and especially for new adjunct members, we wanted to have a material in place that would provide and remain uniform and provide high standards. So that is the reason why we chose the advanced level writing course to start with. So next, I'd like to talk a little bit about the timeline. So we started talking about open educational resources around fall 2018 in our ESL area. And we were kind of brainstorming in our meetings if this would be something that we can, look into and what course would be a good fit to start with. And then some of our colleagues volunteered, including me, to look into using OERs for our courses. And then in spring 2019, it was 4 of us who wanted to work on this. So in spring 2019, we applied for the CFI grant to develop OER materials and then provided the school a timeline about the project that we wanted to be involved with. And by the end of spring 2019, we had already gathered a quite amount of materials that we could use for our first chapter titled From Paragraph to Essays. And then we continued researching and looking for materials during our summer break. And then in fall 2019, after we attended the Maryland Open Source Textbook Initiative conference, we were inspired with the amount of information that we found out and seeing what other colleagues have done in other institutions in Maryland have really inspired and motivated us to continue this project. So we ended up working harder, and by the end of fall 2019, we had developed 4 of the modules that we had in mind. So we could also call these chapters basically, and each one of us took one of the modules to develop individually, and then we would share the materials with each other. So for example, I took module 3 and worked on compare contrast essays. And when doing this, we had a template in mind, what we wanted to accomplish and how we wanted to look, how we wanted the materials to look. So to give you an example, I'll take you over to our Blackboard site right now. So we have gathered all these resources in our master Blackboard site for 202, and now we have a folder for all OER materials, and our faculty members who teach with OER this semester have access to these materials. For example, I worked on the compare contrast essay module. So again, we have materials for students and we have packaged these. So when you click on the material, it is around 20 pages long, and this is what we give our students. And just like in a course book, just like you would find in a chapter, right? It has an introduction. There are some visuals to introduce the compare and contrast. And then there are a few items that I added, my personal experience to compare to universities that I had applied in the past. And then we talk a little bit about the organization of compare contrast essays. And then we have sample essays. One of my colleagues actually wrote this sample. And then I found another sample in another OER material. So again, we made it look just like a course book, right? With samples, with explanations, and added a lot of activities based on what exactly we want our students to accomplish at the end of the semester. And here is another sample that I found from a open educational resource on the differences between London and Washington, D.C. Again, this comes from Writing for Success resource. And again, I always make sure it is an open free book. And then I look through the contents just to make sure what I am using is actually licensed under the Creative Commons. So I don't run into any challenges later on. So spring 2020, with the lockdown was when actually I started officially teaching with these materials. I had a second 8-week accelerated course, and because we were in a lockdown right after spring break, I did not have my 202 course book with me. So this was also a good opportunity to start using open educational resources that we had put together, just also to gain experience so I can share with my colleagues in the department later on, so we can ease the process for each other. And then this semester we offer, I believe, around 10 or 12 sections of the 202 course, and all full-time faculty members are definitely using the OER materials that we developed, and the majority of the adjuncts are also using it, but we will require it for spring 2021. So our goal at this point after this semester is to collect some data to see how well our students did, and also collect anecdotal evidence from faculty and students who have used the textbook, and hope that we can continue improving and building the resources. Do I have any questions at this point before I go ahead and start sharing some of my resources with you? Any questions, anybody? Okay. So here are a few materials that I now would like to share with you. In the 202 class, we start talking about the organization of the essay. And in the previous level, students learn to write a paragraph. We teach them the basic structure of a paragraph. And then in 202, they further expand onto that. So the first lesson is always about the organization and the parts of the essay, and how we further build on the structure that we have learned in the previous course. So here is a resource that I found from Elements of Paragraphs and Essays by Delpha Thomas. Again, it's a copyrighted, Creative Commons licensed, share alike, non-commercial material that I found through one of the specialized search engines. And within here, I am just using the section on what is an essay. So again, I start the class discussion with this particular activity, where I ask the students how we organize an essay and what the parts of an essay are. And then we take the discussion to the next step. And for the next step, I have integrated again a video that I found, which is also an OER material to the UCI Open, which talks about different types of introductory paragraphs in essays. And then it talks about the parts of an introduction with the hook, the general background, and then how we tie that information into the thesis statement. Again, this is great, especially right now when we are teaching online and we are constantly in front of a computer screen. Having that video option and having this open educational resource available makes a big difference. You know, it gives me a break a little bit, and then I can provide this resource as a video on my Blackboard site for my students to rewatch, to review the material. And again, it targets every single thing that I want for the first lesson in my 202 course. So we talk about the funnel introduction, and there is an example that we go and talk about. So again, this is another great OER resource that I found. And then going back to the next activity, again, I tie that into another resource that I found from the first material that I shared with you earlier. So after we watch that video, right, to assess their understanding, I use this activity. Again, I found this activity just as is, and it fits perfectly the content that I'm covering. So I give the students a chance to think about, to fill in the blanks in this activity. And then I tie that into the sample introduction, the funnel method. Again, this comes from another OER resource that I found titled Introduction to Academic Writing for ESOL Students. And then I take that to the next level to work on writing thesis statements. Again, all of these materials are copyrighted under the Creative Commons license. This is a share alike, right? Again, so when I click on this PDF, this is again an OER resource. There are 10 sentences, so we work on this, or I assign this material to a group of students to discuss the details of these sentences, to identify what would work as a thesis and what would not. And then again, the answers are provided in another link also. Again, this is an OER material. And then after we use this resource, we continue talking about writing the body paragraphs in the essay. And then there is another video that I found, which is an OER resource that is 13 minutes long. I break this into pieces and I stop the video occasionally. So we talk about the details of the thesis and how we would further develop the topic sentences based on the thesis that we have. And then we take it to the next step and discuss how we would further elaborate on the topic sentences for the body paragraphs. And this example that is given in this resource is a great tool to start with before I actually share the samples that we have in the packages that we give to the students. So I use the videos as an introduction to the content, and then I give the students a chance to collaborate and read the example essays that we share with them in the packages that we provide them. So for example, in this video, there was this essay titled "Don't Expel Them." And this essay did not have an introduction and a conclusion. So what I did, I repurposed this sample, I typed it up, and then I share this with my students for their first writing activity. Again, I provide a link to the OER material so that they can rewatch the video. And then they have the essay just like it was given in the video without the introduction and then without the conclusion. And I asked them for their first writing practice to practice writing that introduction, just like we learned in the first lesson. I make sure they have, the hook, the background sentences, and tie that information into the thesis that is given to them. And then I expect them to write the conclusion by restating the thesis and then providing the necessary information to summarize the key points. So again, this is really the beauty of using open educational resources. This is what we mean by repurposing the materials, right? Instead of just making them watch the video, I actually make them do something with the information that I got from the video, right? So I repurposed the material. Again, I customized it based on the things that I am trying to accomplish for this particular lesson that I am teaching. And then I am doing the same thing for writing the conclusion as well. And I have another video for that. Any questions at this point? So again, my goal really is here to kind of share a few materials that I have used in my course, so I can be an inspiration to show you how I am repurposing the materials that we are finding. Again, here is another material that I found from University of Victoria's site. This was a reading activity, so there is an audio, and then this was just a 4-paragraph or 5-paragraph essay, right? Again, licensed with Creative Commons. I repurposed this text. I typed up the text as a paragraph, and then I turned this information into an editing text. So I repurposed the content, right, for my needs. So one of the objectives that we are trying to accomplish in this course is teaching students editing skills and helping them find most commonly done mistakes like spelling mistakes, capitalization, fragments, run-ons. So by repurposing this material, I am targeting this objective and trying to help the students improve their editing skills. So when we are sharing this with the faculty, I make sure we have the answer key attached to it as well. And then here is another one on the compare and contrast unit package that I showed you earlier. But here, there's something that I want to show you, which is awesome about one of the materials that I have shared with you earlier. Sorry, I'm going a little bit too fast here. So as I showed you earlier, this particular example, London and Washington, D.C. sample, comes from this resource, Writing for Success, from the University of Minnesota's Open Library. So again, when looking at this resource, I looked at the contents page first, right? To identify the subjects that might be an interest to me. And then I found out that here towards the end, there were additional example essays. And this is where I found the compare contrast essay on London versus Washington, D.C. But what I also like about this particular resource is it doesn't just provide this 5-paragraph standard essay format, but it provides additional links to articles from newspapers, or for example, Chronicles of Higher Education. Here is an example from the Chronicles of Higher Education, an article published in 2013, which is an example compare contrast essay titled, I am your teacher, not your internet service provider. Again, these could be assigned for additional reading as additional study materials. And this way we can also kind of guide our students and prepare them for what is coming next, right? After ESL 0202 is done, they're going to move into English 1010. So it's important for them to have that open mind and to think a little bit outside the box, that, you know, we don't always write in the 5-paragraph essay format. You know, the composition course will cover more about this, but by providing them additional resources through these OER materials, we actually help them to gain more knowledge on what is coming up in the following courses that they will be taking. Here is another resource that we put together on sentence types in English. Again, we packaged this resource, sentence types in English, and then I will show you this first PDF that we found through UNC's database. Again, this is licensed with the Creative Commons, and this is just a great 1-page handout that summarizes all 4 types of sentences that we cover in this particular course. And then from additional resources, I found additional samples to kind of give students an idea for each type of sentence, and then attached exercises just like we would have in a commercial textbook. And then the licenses for each of these materials are also given at the end of each chapter. Again, this kind of summarizes all the materials and some references here. And I am thankful for you to having participated in my session this afternoon. So I would like to open it up for questions. If you have any feedback you would like to get, or any questions you have, I'm happy to answer. Again, the process is not easy. It takes time. But if you work with a group of colleagues that are just as motivated and excited like you are, then the process becomes easier and much more enjoyable. So I truly enjoy working with 3 of my colleagues with whom I'm in this OER committee in the ESL area. And we collaborate really well and put a lot of time and energy into this. And I look forward to continuing this project and improving the material so far that we have put together for our faculty members. Let me double check the chat box just in case to make sure I'm not missing anything. I agree, Paul. Yes, you said I would add quality to list of disadvantages. Yes, absolutely. We have to double check the quality of the materials. Again, that's why this gets a little bit time consuming. You cannot just use the materials as they are. Again, some resources are 10, 20 pages, others are 300 pages long. Again, identifying what really fits your needs and then quality checking is really key when using open educational resources. Just because they're free and available should not make them a reliable resource. I agree. Thank you for that feedback.
Hi, Sevtop. First of all, thanks for presenting today. This is interesting information. I think collectively as a college, we're really headed towards OERs or ZCOS courses. It's a daunting process, and I know that you know it's a lot to take on, and that's why I wanted to make the comment about the quality. It's tricky because there's, as you point out, there's so much out there that part of the process that's daunting is wading through it all and finding something that is in a decent enough shape that it can be reworked. We've been trying to do this in the English 1010, our basic composition class, for a while now, and we almost feel like it would be less work to just create our own materials. But that's a really daunting process too. I have a question. If so, the materials that you create, like let's say that you pull something from Creative Commons or Most or wherever, and you rework it and you make it into what you want it to be. Where does it then live? I mean, does that make sense, that question?
Yes, so we are right now sharing what we have put together in the master Blackboard site that we have for the 202 course in a folder. And again, the process of constantly updating it and working through it is not easy. And again, I don't know what the next step will be, but I got really inspired having seen the LibreText platform where we can actually repurpose what we have and make it more user-friendly for us and for other faculty members, and even have the option of getting it printed for our students would make things so much more easier. As they are right now, they're just in, Word files as chapters or modules, and that's how we're keeping them right now. And I'm interested in, knowing how other departments are hosting it as well, where they are keeping them, and how they are updating the materials as well as they are using it. That's why I wanted to share today my experience and hope that, we will have other faculty members who can kind of bring in what they have and share their experiences also. Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you, Tanika. I agree with you too. Again, the amount of information that is out there provides us a starting point, but then again, we have to be careful. As Paul said, one of the disadvantages is the quality of the materials. So, and again, it's something that we can start looking into, and then with the things that we have and with the things that are coming along, I believe that we are headed to a better direction. And with the college's support, the process will become easier than it was for some of us who started the project a few years ago. Well, again, thank you all for participating. I look forward to seeing some of you maybe in the next OER session that I'm planning to attend. Have a great afternoon. Thank you.